The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, ABM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users. On demand on YouTube and on iTunes and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com. And I urge you to read the blog and comment because many of the issues we discuss on the show are pre-discussed on the blog. And of course, thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we are distributed across the United States coast to coast into 12 million additional households. I'm your host, Gary Baumgarten. Well, we got stood up last week by a couple of guests, and we got stood up today, or the guy's running late. I don't know. Andy Alexander, the Washington bureau chief for Cox Newspapers, was supposed to be here talking about open government. We could talk about that anyway. I don't need Andy Alexander to talk about how closed our government is. Actually, before we get to Andy, presuming that he joins us, I just want to point out to everyone that today marks the 4,000th death of U.S. troops in Iraq, right on the heels of the 5th anniversary of the beginning of the U.S.-led invasion. 4 guys were killed by a roadside bomb. One of the 4 makes number 4,000. I guess it doesn't really matter whether you are 3,998 or 4,000. You're dead. That's 4,000 U.S. military deaths. According to IraqBodyCount.org, there are more than 80,000 documented civilian deaths. Also, in addition to 4,000 U.S. deaths, there are 175 British troops and 133 other coalition service members who have been killed. This figure does not include those who have been maimed or otherwise injured, including psychologically. Of course, war is hell, somebody said, and there are always going to be deaths. I mean, isn't that the intent of a war, to kill your enemy? And if he's your enemy, then you're their enemy. And, you know, they're killing one another. I'm told that Andy Alexander is with us. Before we get to him, I just wanted to get a little bit political about the 4,000 deaths. Alan Jacey, our political correspondent here on News Talk Online on Paltalk.com, you know, before I walked into the studio, I was looking to see what the 3 candidates for President of the United States had to say about this sad milestone, 4,000 U.S. deaths. I was able to find a statement from Hillary. I was able to find a statement from Barack. I don't see anything, you know, maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I don't see anything from the John McCain camp. What the heck's going on?
Yeah, Gary, again, surprising, coming from a veteran, that he has released no statement in commemoration of the 4,000th death in Iraq, combat-related death. Is he saving it for later? Did he wait to see what the other candidates came out with? I don't know. If I was in his boots, I would be the first out there. Again, particularly with his military background. It's kind of shocking, and you know, in light of all the gaps that happened in the McCain, you know, with McCain last week during his trip overseas, I'm just surprised at this point that he's bringing it to our shores. The gap continues. I think this is really politically a terrible thing, and as just an American, I think it's kind of terrible that somebody of his character and profile has not released a statement.
I'm beginning to wonder whether he's getting some elder moments and some lapses in judgment and memory. I'm not saying that that's the case, but if it is the case, I think the American people need to know about that, because the faux pas that he made during his Middle East trip are just a sign of a lack of detail. By the way, in Argentina, it's a national holiday today. It's the Day of Memory about the tens of thousands who disappeared, 30,000, when there was a military dictatorship there in the 70s. So we remember with them as well that. We also look with quiet amazement and concern about what's going on in Tibet and other places in the world, where people who are just innocents because they get trapped in something end up dying. It's really, really very sad. Well, anyway, today's guest is Andy Alexander on that hopeful note. He is the Washington Bureau Chief for Cox Newspapers. You know, Hillary Clinton responded to the Sunshine Week 2008 survey of presidential candidates, and she said that she is committed to restoring open government. She says she would mandate more open meetings and the release of public documents, as well as nominating an attorney general who has a proven commitment to open government. Well, I find this very curious. Andy Alexander, the co-chair of the American Society of Newspaper Editors Freedom of Information Committee, given the fact that in my experience covering Senator Clinton here in New York, she hasn't been all that forthcoming. She's been very controlling of the message to the news media and by extension her constituents, and they had to literally almost twist her arm to get her to release documents that should have been public record of her activities in the White House that, of course, would have interest anyway historically, but have added interest to those of us who are still determining who we want to support for President of the United States. Is this all form and no substance, Andy Alexander? And welcome, by the way, to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
What a welcome. Thanks for having me on. Well, gosh, I don't know if it's all form and no substance. I can tell you that many people, when they run for office, make pledges of openness in government, but when it comes to releasing information that might be critical of them or might expose their foibles, that they become a little bit more restrictive than they would normally. I've never covered Senator Clinton during her time in New York, so I wouldn't know. But what she has said here in her statement to Sunshine Week is it's laudable from the perspective of the open government community. But again, we know historically that when it gets a little bit too close to lawmakers, they think twice about releasing information.
Well, consider yourself lucky that you haven't had to cover her, because from a reporter's standpoint, she's a pain in the rear end. I mean, she'll call a news conference and make you wait 2 hours, 2.5 hours before she comes out. Sorry, I was busy meeting with these constituents, and while you're very important, my constituents, come on, unbelievable. And, she really controls the message. You'll rarely see her talking to, on this campaign, to the national media directly. It's just, I know the idea of running for president is to get elected by whatever means necessary. And by the way, folks,